something in a conversation today, and it really resonated with me. True love really is sacrifice. And it's putting yourself second. It's putting yourself in a place. I don't think that you can have love, true love, without sacrifice. And so it's sacrificing what I want, sacrificing what I need, sacrificing what I thought was right, for the sake of love, for the sake of my relationship with my wife.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to this episode of Creating the Future. Man, we've been having so much fun this month. Lots of great comments this month as we're talking about love and marriage. Started out talking about with Pastor Pratyash and Ashley and how God can write your love story. If you've not heard that podcast, you need to go back and hear their story. It's absolutely amazing. Yes. And then last week we had Pastor Johnny and Vanessa talking about those early years of marriage. And I heard lots of good feedback from young adults who are ready to get married or getting close, dating couples, engaged couples, newlywed couples talking. And today we have Pastor Ken and Madonna with us, and super excited to interview them because they are at the empty nest season of marriage after 28 years of marriage with a 26-year-old daughter, Olivia, who's doing some great things. And she's a traveling nurse, so she's in Nebraska right now. What's in Nebraska? Just Olivia, I guess.
Corn,
yeah. And a boyfriend, I think, right?
Yeah,
so that might have something to do with it too.
Yeah.
And then Pastor Jeremiah, if you don't know, I sure most probably do, that are at least associated with our church, but Pastor Jeremiah is their son, who is 22 years old. He's our South Shore youth pastor there. And so we get to interview them on love and marriage today, but starting with the empty nest years. And I do want to say this as we get started too. If you have not liked and subscribed, to make sure that you do that. Last I saw, we are at 699 subscribers.
Nice.
Come on, we got to hit at least 700 this week. Come on, 699. That's ridiculous. We got to go over the hump. All right, so with this being said, and talking about empty nest staging and all of that, how is the adjustment period of empty nesting? You know, you raise kids, you're there all the time, and then all of a sudden it's like they're gone. And in y'all's case, I think they sort of left together to some regard. So how has that been? Tell us the story. What's that experience been like for you guys?
Yeah.
For me, it was tough. Olivia had been in and out a couple of times with college and coming home and going back out to college to Southeastern and stuff. And then when she bought the house, she graduated, she bought the house, and Jeremiah moved out with her, which is a wonderful thing because I love the relationship that they have together. But I got the call from Jeremiah, hey, Mom, I'm heading out. I'm staying at Olivia's tonight. I was on my way home from Plant City and I cried the whole way home. I knew Olivia was going and I knew he was going. It just hit me in that moment when it happened. Yeah. So it's a great thing, but it still pulls on your heartstrings.
Yeah. It's been really interesting trying to navigate that world. It's a different world because for 20 years we spent building our life around the kids, kind of, and now they're not there. And so there was a season where it just kind of felt a little empty and trying to figure out what to do and remember who we are and stuff like that. And we were intentional building that relationship beforehand. Right. So.
Yeah, you guys had a great marriage even before all this, obviously, and still now. It's not like it's just before, but you guys have an amazing marriage, and that's why you do so much marriage counseling here. Y'all teach marriage small groups because it's not just something you're teaching or saying, it's something you're living, and you do a great job of that. But as I understand it, when Olivia got her place, essentially she bought a condo, I think, right? Or a townhome. Mm-hmm. When she bought that, Jeremiah just went with her to kind of be her roommate, which is in one sense beautiful because, he's there to protect her and watch out for each other and all that. In another sense, it's like both of them were gone. Suddenly.
You empty nest overnight, you know, not just you lose one, but it's empty nest overnight. And
for us, it was one of those things that we had such a routine in our house. Like we played games weekly with them, we ate dinner with them, and then all of a sudden they're gone. And I'm texting going, hey, you coming over for dinner tonight? Hey, you guys want to come over and play games Friday night?
I think like the first month we had them over at least every weekend, if not twice a week, just to come and eat and hang out with us because it was a little withdrawal for us. Yeah.
So good. All right. So let's say you're talking to a couple or even yourself a few years ago, you're talking to a couple with teenage children, they've somewhat built their life around their kids in some regard. What advice would you give them for this next season of empty nesting?
Yeah, I would say, create intentional opportunities with your wife, because at some point, even before this, you are a married couple before you are parents. And so you have to maintain that relationship and work on that relationship and be best friends so that when your kids leave, you don't feel completely lost. But then also, I think, build intentional moments with your kids. The time that you have with them isn't going to last forever. It may feel like it will. And sometimes, especially when they're teenagers, it may be completely annoying and it may feel like it will last forever. But at some point, they're going to be gone and you will miss them. Yeah. And so build those intentional moments. That's what I would say.
That was the key for us. It truly, for both of us, is that intentionality. And I think for me, I would look at a situation and say, will I regret this? Will I regret not doing this? And putting that into perspective, whether it was with me and him or whether it was as a family, we did almost all of our vacations were together because I knew that day would come and I'd be like, okay, can I have him back? Can I take him back a little bit? But it's that intentionality. We were very intentional about a lot of things.
Yeah. That's beautiful. We talked about this in church last Sunday. For those who weren't there, make sure that you listen. But you really do have to put your marriage first. Yeah. The greatest gift you can ever give your children is actually a healthy marriage. Every single statistic and category, percentage wise, they are more likely to succeed if they come from a healthy 2-parent home. And so putting that first, and then you're walking out these tough years. So, all right, let's switch from empty nesting to just marriage. 28 years is a lot longer than a lot of people last, right? And I don't want to use the word last as if you've endured 28 years. But I also know realistically that there's been moments that you probably wanted to quit. There's been moments that you didn't know if you would make it. There's just, that's real life. That's the real. And so tell us about any of those moments where you felt like, man, am I going to make it through this or not?
Wow. So, we've had several of those moments. We had a moment, I think the most memorable for me was early on in our marriage where we had an argument, and the way it ended, I didn't know if we were going to make it. Yeah. And I'm on the bathroom floor crying. She's outside crying, and I didn't know if we were going to make it. And we had to, both of us come back together and kind of put our ego aside and really, repent to one another and choose to move forward. Yeah. Because I think we all come to these moments where you find yourself in a place of disagreement. And I said something in a conversation today, and it really resonated with me. True love really is sacrifice. Yeah. And it's putting yourself second. It's putting yourself in a place. I don't think that you can have love, true love, without sacrifice. So good. And so it's sacrificing what I want, sacrificing what I need, sacrificing what I thought was right for the sake of love, for the sake of my relationship with my wife, because my relationship with her is more important than being right, than any of those things. And ultimately, if I do that, if I sacrifice and build that culture and that lifestyle of sacrifice, it will be reciprocated. At the sake of really breaking context and doing things that we tell people never to do with Scripture. In Galatians it talks about don't grow weary in well doing, for in due season you'll reap. For whatsoever a man sows, that therefore he also reaps. And I think we have to not grow weary in sacrificing for our spouse, in sacrificing us for that love of our life. Because if we don't grow weary, when we've sown, we're going to reap something, and that something is a healthy marriage. And that's what we've reaped.
Yeah, so that's so good. So good.
I remember a time we had just left ministry. God had moved us on and said, your time is up in Jacksonville. And we moved to Louisiana. We were living with his mom. The house was packed. Every room, we were sleeping on an air mattress in the living room with Olivia on a mat. And that was some hard times. As much as we were welcomed, as much as for the most part, we all got along well. There was no issues there. But I remember distinctly something happening. And it made me extremely angry. And I took my ring off and handed it to him. Wow. I couldn't tell you right now what it was. Thank goodness it wasn't that important. But I remember that moment, and I look back and go, oh my gosh, because we were still in the learning process. Yeah. We look at the beginning of our marriage and think, oh, we've got it all worked out. And 2 years in, we're going, what did we get ourselves into? And we wish we knew then what we know now, and the things that people have said to us that have poured into us, which is probably one of the reasons why we're so passionate about wanting to help marriages and wanting to help people understand it is about the sacrifice. You have to put everything that you want to the side, but in the process, if your spouse is getting to know you well enough, they pick it up for you.
Yeah.
And then
That's
they
so good.
do the serving
So good.
of what you need.
Yeah.
And I think those are some things that we really learned over time
Yeah.
to get us to 28 years.
Yeah.
That's so good. That's so good. I'm reminded, I heard somebody say this years ago, and I've repeated it enough that I just start saying it as if it's mine. You know how that works. But, marriage is about meeting a need you don't have or understand.
Yep.
And it's
true.
meeting the need in the other, which is that selfless, that self-sacrifice.
Yeah.
I'm going to take care of you, even if I don't understand it and I don't have this need, but I'm going to meet the other person's need.
Yeah.
It's funny, I ask a question here, when's the time you wanted to quit? And I thought to myself, you got to be really cautious with that question because it might have been like on the car ride on the way here.
No, not today. Not today. I won't say anything about yesterday. No, I'm just kidding.
So this may be the same answer. It might be slightly different, and feel free to just throw it back to me if you don't have it. But okay, so those are moments you wanted to quit. But I've also, like Ada and I have experienced a lot of hardship in different ways. It was never a moment of wanting to quit. It's just, man, we survived this, and it actually pulled us closer together.
Yeah.
Have you guys had those kind of moments too? And maybe, Madonna, you just sort of shared a little bit going to Louisiana, but maybe there's other things too where it's not like we were ready to get divorced. It was just, these are really hard things we went through in a marriage.
Yeah. I mean, I remember just to list a few, getting fired from a job and us having to endure that together and walk through that together.
Yeah.
The
Emotionally,
rejection,
financially, spiritually.
the rejection of that and
Yeah.
really navigating that. I know that there was a season of financial difficulty that we had to really endure, a couple of them. One where we had to really get rid of debt and do some debt consolidation and sacrifice to pay that off. And then one where I remember sitting in our bedroom, on our bedroom floor with our kids, and us having to tell them that mom and dad can't pay to fix the car.
Wow.
And we need to borrow your
Savings bonds.
so that we can sell them, so that we can fix the car, and we're going to pay you back because we see a light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah.
But this is where we are right now, and those are embarrassing moments.
Right.
Those are hard moments. But those are the type of moments where if you do them together and if you recognize that you're on the same team, God didn't put you together to be on a different team. He put you together to tackle those things together and to be on a team. And when you do that, man, you can conquer just about anything as a couple. And when we did that, it drew us closer together.
That's so good.
And I think in the process, it also, not only did it draw us closer together, but as a family, we didn't try to overshadow everything's peachy keen jelly bean. We're struggling, and we need, because we wanted our kids to see the real us.
Right.
Do they know everything? No. But we wanted them to see it so that maybe they can learn from it. Because what we went through financially, in the process of all this, we have learned a lot of things, and we have in turn poured it into our children regarding savings or retirement or those types of things, so that they can maybe not make the same mistakes we make, and they'll be a step or two or three ahead of where we are starting out. And honestly, both of our kids are. Like, they're way ahead of where we were at 22 and 26.
Well, our ceiling will be their floor.
Correct.
Right? Isn't that part of the point?
That is part of who we are.
And you guys are a picture of what I shared a second ago, what we talked about on Sunday. When you have a healthy marriage, it allows the kids to excel. And it doesn't make it automatic by any means, but it does percentage-wise definitely give them a leg up on kids that didn't have that. And so that's such a beautiful thing. All right, if you were, like, whether we're talking about wanting to quit in marriage or the hard times, and you've already answered this a little bit, but maybe elaborate a little bit more. If you were talking to yourself, or you're talking to Johnny and Vanessa, who were on last month, right? You're talking to the young couple from a few years ago, that's somewhere in between 4 years and 28 years, they're going to walk through some hell. They're going to walk through some hardships. They're going to get fired from jobs. They're going to have financial struggles. They're going to want to quit in their marriage. They're going to, what would you say to them?
The bottom line is you gotta stay together. You gotta be on the same page with each other. I know there's times where I felt like I was crumbling, but yet he came alongside and put his arm around me and said, it's going to be okay.
So good.
And we've got a saying between us that he'll look at me and say, it's okay. And we actually look at each other and say, it's okay, it'll be okay, Mrs. Chickaby. And
it's from a movie
that we knew
Okay.
a long time ago. But just hearing those words from him or from me to him, because it's been vice versa.
Right.
And knowing that your spouse is on, as he said, on your team, you're going to battle together. but when you battle together, you become stronger.
Yeah.
And it truly is. It's the caveat to it all. It's the foundation to it all.
Yeah.
To help you get through whatever you are facing.
Yeah. So good.
Yeah, I would, if I could, I just would speak to men specifically. I made the mistake early on of not being curious about my wife. And I discovered and really kind of treated her like I had won something. And so just began to kind of set her on the shelf and do my thing. And I discovered that man, this woman is an enigma wrapped in a mystery that I just want to explore for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
It'll take you that long.
And it'll take me that long. But
You still will never get
and I still never get. But I just want to encourage you guys to create for yourself a journey of curiosity where you're seeking after your wife, because if you do that, man, you will never get bored learning her. You'll never get bored discovering who she is. And as you discover her, as you discover the quirks and the things about her that make her her, it's going to cause her to feel accepted, to feel loved, to feel appreciated, to feel valued. It'll draw you closer together. It'll by learning that, it will create these opportunities for you to bless her. Me creating that moment in my mind of I'm going to be curious about her. I'm going to ask her questions. I think for me, set me on a good path. Set me on a better path of treating her, of honoring her, of loving her, of pursuing her, of chasing her.
Yeah.
And honestly, while we miss our kids, I would say that right now is our best days of marriage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're having more fun together. And, sometimes it's not even just going and doing stuff together. Sometimes it's sitting in this companionable silence and just doing stuff together.
Reading.
Yeah.
Or
Silence. What is that?
Yeah, well, it's what you get when the kids leave. No, I'm just kidding. But we'll sit there some evenings and just sit in the chair next to each other and have a TV show on or have our iPads out reading a book and sitting there just holding each other's hands. And it's a moment not of have to, but it's a moment of enjoyment where we just get to sit in each other's presence. But then we also have these extraordinary adventures that we get to go on, where we get to do things. She's my travel guru, travel buddy, and takes us on all kinds of adventures. But we get to do that together, and it's amazing. But it takes effort and work when you're younger, and a curiosity and putting them first, and that sacrifice of love to build up to that place where you get to really reap the harvest.
I would add to mine also, I didn't say this, but early on, I wish we would have learned some of the things that we were going through. I wish we would have learned more from them. So you go through things and you go through situations, whether it's emotionally or whether it's financially, whatever it is, and you realize something's not right and you fix it, but then it tends to happen again. It's like, why is this happening again? We've learned from this. So I would say early on to the younger couples, if you go through something, what are you taking from it? What are you learning from it to make your marriage better and to strengthen your marriage, so that not that it won't happen again, but you can recognize it quickly and be able to. And that's something that he will look at me if I've got this face on, and he'll go, "Are you okay? Are you hurting? What's going on? Did I do something?" He starts asking me questions, which if anybody knows Pastor Ken, he asks the questions, but he recognizes it. So he's very in tune to where I am in the moment, very focused on that. And I think that's one of the things that he's learned over time. And so learn from what you've went through and try to make it better.
That's so good. That's so good. All right, last question, but this is a deep one. I feel like oftentimes people get married, and we get married to who we are and to who the person is. But that's not who the person is in 10 years or 20 years or 50 years. Next week we got Jim and Chris Beard. You're not going to miss that. 54 years.
Yes.
Wow.
But
Goals.
the person who
right.
The person who's 77 and the person who's 17 are just you're almost not even the same person.
No.
Yeah.
That's one of the reasons why, when I was a youth pastor, I was always deterrent of tattoos, because I'm like, that's you at 21, you get this tattoo, but when you're 51, you're probably not going to want that same thing that became permanent at that 21-year-old age. And so there's something about evolving together as a couple, watching individually evolve, and then evolving as a couple that has to happen, that when it happens well, it's beautiful. Yeah. When it happens poorly,
Yeah.
Now somebody's going to find themselves.
Yeah.
And
Right.
trying to figure out who they are and all these kind of things that go on. So speak to that if you would. Like, how have you guys evolved?
Yeah.
And what advice would you give to couples who are evolving?
Well, go ahead. Me?
Yeah, go ahead.
So I can tell you, he and I are not even close to who we were 28 years ago.
Yeah.
Not even close. I was this crazy adventure, and the adventure is still there, and I'm still loud at times, and I am still who I am at a core, but it's almost like because of God and because of our relationship being set in a foundation of who he is, it's like I've become polished a little bit more and more refined. But yes, I have been this outgoing, I am out there and I have a good time. Whereas when I met him, and most people don't know this of Pastor Ken, he is extremely quiet. We can go home on a Saturday now, and because he's talked the morning, you're lucky unless you ask him a question, I promise you he's probably not saying 10 words the rest of the day.
Yep.
He is very quiet. So you take him being over here, a very quiet, and me, I'll give you 20,000 words in 3 hours if you let me, to where we have, because we've been together so long, he actually opens up a little bit more. And whereas I'm more of the quiet, it's funny. I'll actually tell you a funny story at our Christmas party at your house. I've always been the life of the party. Like I like to be around. The more people, the merrier.
You're mingling. And
yes. I remember at the Christmas party this year, I was fine. There was 10, 15 people there. I kid you not. The more it got, I was like, I think I'm going to step outside on the back porch. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm becoming Ken. like I've got to step out for a few minutes and recharge. And I've never been like that, but you become like we're bouncing off of each other. And so it's like we're coming to that middle of there are moments where he's more outgoing now than he used to be, and I'm more introverted and I've come to more of the quiet side.
Yeah, there were places where we were the extreme opposite. You know, I was very conflict averse, and didn't really know how to handle conflict. If I got into conflict, it would always be raising my voice because I have to try to win in a conflict, and so couldn't even have a disagreement. And she was very well versed in conflict, and sometimes ran toward it. You know, we'll just say that.
That's true.
But you know, you've really seen a lot of the rough edges of those two different things kind of rub off to where, like even now in my job, there are a lot of times where I have to have conflict, and that's kind of rubbed off, and I've been able to learn how to have conflict in a healthy way, and things like that, and she has learned how to have conflict in a healthy way and not go after it. And there are moments where I remember she'd get aggravated at me, so aggravated because I would have this way of dealing with conflict where I would let it play out a little bit longer than she wanted it to play out. And there are times now where I'm like, well, do we need to go talk to him? And she's like, no, let's just let it play out. And so there's been this beautiful balancing and this beautiful coming. I think sometimes God puts opposites together or allows opposites to come together because I think he wants to bring us to a healthy place together. And I think sometimes, I'll say that sometimes the very thing that attracts us to that individual because of their difference often becomes the same thing that repels us from one another. You know, it's her adventure that excites me, but it also makes me nervous. It also gives me some anxiety on the inside. And so, you know, I've got to make sure that I don't reject the very thing that I love and appreciate about her. And I have to make sure that I welcome that in, that I value that I appreciate that I give space for that, because it will make me a better person. I've gone to places in this world that I never would have went to without my wife. You know, I've been to Auschwitz in Poland, which was a place that always in the back of my head, you know, like, yeah, I'd like to go see that someday, but I never really imagined that it was a reality. But it became a reality because I have an adventurous wife. And yeah, I was nervous about it because you're in a place where nobody speaks the language and all this kind of stuff. But man, what a great experience to be able to go there. And so I would just say, be careful of the things that are your opposite about, just because God has a way of bringing you to a place of health and wholeness, and using your spouse who's different to bring balance. And I don't like that word balance, but to bring refinement into your life.
That's good. That's so good.
That is good.
So good. I'll leave you with this thought as well. This is, I think, one of the reasons why it's so important to marry somebody who's a Christian if you are a Christian. Because sometimes you can be on the same road, but you're going slightly different directions. Well, 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road, 20 years, a little angle is suddenly a long way.
Yeah.
Right? And as long as you're both going in the same direction, you can consistently evolve and change and adapt and become different throughout life, but you're still going in the same direction.
Right.
And I think that's one of the reasons why we always say, if you're a dating couple, like find the person who's running after God as hard as you can and look at that person as a potential mate, right? That's what matters, because you want to have people that are going in the same direction to the best of your ability, the same speed that you're going, because then as you change, because it's going to happen, and young couples almost never think about it, but you are not going to be the same person at 40 that you are at 25. It's just the way life works, and that's a good thing.
Yeah.
But you need to make sure that you're adapting and evolving together, and the primary place that is within your relationship with the Lord. So that's so important. So with that being said, we're going to start to wrap up. Next week, we do have Jim and Chris Beard with us, 54 years of marriage, I think it is. You're going to love to hear from them. If you haven't heard the previous podcast, make sure you go back and listen to those as well. And then once again, if you haven't liked or subscribed, make sure that you do that. Just take a second, make sure you hit the little bell thing so that you get all the news whenever we do upload something, and you can always be aware of it. So with that being said, Pastor Ken, Madonna, thank you guys for being on. You guys are a blessing. I pray that many marriages are going to be healthier and better because they get to listen to this.
Amen.
Thank you.
All right. God bless you guys.